learners. We are going to be talking about the course Organizing Childcare Services, which is a part of the Diploma in Early Childhood Care and Education and also part of the Certificate in Nutrition and Childcare. So, the course code is DEC1 for the Diploma students and CNCC2 for the Certificate students. So, the topic that we are going to talk about today is role of play in children's development. So, we are going to see how play impacts children's development. After this talk, you should be able to define the characteristics of play and describe the role of play in children's development. So, let us first try and understand what is it that we mean by play. So, we will look at some examples of children's activities and try to identify features on the basis of which we can say that a particular activity is play. So, let us look at some examples of children's activities. A 3-year-old child who is walking in the garden suddenly sees a pipe which is used for watering plants and he begins to examine it. He puts his finger inside the hole from where the water is coming. The water sprays in all directions. He takes out his finger and puts it back again, and this changes the movement of the water, and he keeps doing this activity for quite some time, putting his finger in, taking it out, making the water go in different directions, and he is engrossed in this activity. He is a 3-year-old child. Let us see another example. A 5-month-old infant who is lying on the bed is given a light rubber toy to play with by her mother. She holds the toy, squeezes it, puts it in her mouth, bites upon it, chews it, takes it out of her mouth, looks at it, tries to move it, again puts it back into her mouth, and she continues to engage with the toy in this way. Let us see another example. A group of 8-year-olds who are engaged in a game of chase in the open ground. So, they are running each other and trying to catch each other, and they are doing this activity for quite some time. So, if anyone was to ask what are the children doing in each of these situations, almost everyone would say, well, they are playing, and that is true, all the children are playing. But technically, what are the features of all these 3 activities? What is it that these 3 activities have in common which make us feel that children are playing? So, one of the foremost things that was happening in all 3 cases was that children were having fun. They were enjoying themselves. That is very important. And the related point, second point, is that children found the activity enjoyable for its own sake. The activity was its own reward. The child did not have any external motivation or any external pressure to do what the children or the child was doing. They were doing it because they were finding that activity satisfying. They were finding that activity satisfying, and so they continued to indulge in it. The activity had some benefits for children in the sense that the activity helped to foster their development, but this was not the children's goal. The children were not engaging in that activity because they thought it was beneficial for them. They were engaging in that activity just because they were finding it fun and enjoyable for its own sake. It was its own reward. So, this is a very important point to make out, how you would classify some activity as play. There is no external motivation. He is not doing it to get praise from someone, or he has not been pressured to do that particular activity. It is out of a genuine feeling of own desire to do it. So, the participation in the activity is spontaneous and of the child's own will. There is no element of force. And most importantly, the child's participation is active. The child has to be actually doing something for us to call that activity play. It is not a passive participation where the child is just sitting and some things are being done for the child. Like often we would say that watching a television is not active participation on part of the child. when a child watches television, we don't say that the child is playing. Though the child may be having fun, the watching the TV may be the child's spontaneous desire, the child may be finding watching TV to be satisfying, but we do not consider the viewing of a TV as active participation on part of the child. So, viewing of a TV show is largely considered to be a passive activity for the child, because the child has everything ready-made which is being shown to the child through that particular program. The child is not really doing anything there. So, having understood what classifies as play, let us think that is play a waste of time? Many times adults say this, oh, don't play so much, come and study. You are wasting your time. But actually no, for young children, play is actually their work. It's the most important thing that the child can do, because the play has a role in fostering children's development. Remember that we are talking in this course about children during the early childhood years, from the time of birth to 6 years of age. So, play is the most important activity for the child, and we tend to think, we try to sort of start off children as old as 3, 3.5 into formal education, and we feel, oh, why are they spending their time playing? But as we will further realize, play actually supports children's development in all areas. So, let us understand how play promotes physical and motor development. This is actually quite easy to understand. We know that physical and motor development depends on the maturation of the body as well as opportunities available to practice skills. So, both the maturation, the biological element, and the environmental element, that is opportunities to practice skills, both are important. Now, through play, children spontaneously get opportunities to practice physical and motor skills. No special effort is required. As they play, the practice of skills, the development of large and fine muscles happens spontaneously. Let us see some examples. When children balance over bricks or jump over a puddle, when they hang from bars or climb to reach the top of the slide, or when they ride a tricycle, all of this involves the use of the large muscles and their coordination improves. When they dig holes in the sand using a stick, when they write something on the sand using a stick, when they put beads in a wire, or they join blocks to create a structure, that involves the use of small muscles of the hand, and that supports fine motor development. So, children constantly engage in such activities, and just by itself, just spontaneously, children's physical and motor development is fostered. You can think of many similar activities which children engage in. Let us see how play promotes social development. Now, one of the first things that happens as the child begins to interact with others, and which is considered to be a part of social development, that is that the child begins to develop a sense of self, and the child's play helps the child to develop a sense of self. How? Let us understand this further. The daily playful interactions with the caregiver which the child has at the time of bathing or feeding or wearing of the clothes, all of such interactions help the child to understand that her own body is separate from other objects. Now, being able to physically differentiate one's body from other people around you and from other objects in the environment, this is the first beginning of the development of sense of self. So, it is these playful interactions with the primary caregiver or anybody else who is looking after the child, which gives the child the idea gradually that I am a distinct, separate human being. Now, further, the development of the self continues further, and how? When the child plays, the child picks up something, the child hits out at something, she kicks something, she pulls something, and when she does that, something happens to the object which she is kicking or pulling or pushing, and through such experiences the child gets an idea of what is it that she can do. So this idea of what I can do helps the child to expand her idea of her own self. Further, what happens further? As the child grows older, maybe is playing outside, maybe is exploring the outdoors, and she overcomes some challenging situation. What would be a challenging situation for a small child? Maybe she sees a puddle in front of her and she is successfully able to jump over the puddle. So when she is able to do that, she develops feelings of confidence and independence. Maybe she can climb up the stairs on her own. So all such feelings help to generate a sense of self-esteem in the child. Self-esteem is an integral part of one's self-concept, what you think about yourself. So we can see that it is through these play in the early years that the child begins to develop a sense of self, which is one of the critical elements in social development. How else does play help in social development? Let us see. A little older, by the time children are 4 and 5 years old, they like to play with each other. And when you play with each other, you need to learn to share, cooperate, see things from another person's point of view. You need to wait for your turn, you need to follow rules. And all of this means that we need to consider the point of view of another person. We can't always play the way we want. We have to fall in line, so to say, with what others also want to do. So learning to be with others is a part of social development, and nothing better to help one to do this than play with the people. Another thing that children do during play is to imitate adults. You would have seen that children may play pretend games such as teacher or doctor patient or even mother father. And when they play such games, they often imitate what they have heard their parents or other adults around them say. Now when they are imitating, they are in a way reinforcing things that have been said to them. So through such play, they learn about behaviors that are expected and about what is considered appropriate behavior. All of this is a part of social development. Learning socially approved ways of behavior is a part of the social development of the child. Further, there is still more how play helps in social development. In play, the children often imagine themselves to be someone else. For example, they may be the mother who is now scolding the doll. The doll is the child in the child's mind. And so the child says the same sentences to this doll. For example, the child says, "Oh, I told you not to eat the chocolate, but you still had the chocolate." So this is exactly perhaps the thing which the child's mother said to her, and she is now saying it to the child doll. So in this way, the child is reinforcing for herself what is appropriate behavior. So imitation during play helps the child to learn a lot of what is considered okay by the culture in which the child lives. Through such play, interacting with them, children learn about different types of occupations, festivals, traditions and beliefs. In other words, play helps the children to become aware of their culture. Let us take up the next domain of development, which is language development, and let us try to see how play promotes language development. So as we all know, in order to learn language, the child has to hear the language, she has to hear the language being spoken around her, and she has to also be speaking that language. Now, the playful interactions which the caregiver has with the child, right from the time the child is born, the caregivers are playing with the child, they are talking with the child. So in this process, the child gets to hear a lot of language. So to say, the child is immersed in language. And these opportunities to hear language are a motivation for the child to speak. Of course, the child has to be maturationally ready, that's important, but the child also needs to hear language. So by around 6 months, we see that the child begins to babble. Babble meaning that they say sounds which combine consonant and vowels. For example, ma ma ma, ba ba ba, pa pa pa, ti ti ti, mi mi mi. We hear children say that. And when they start babbling, the caregivers also respond by talking more to the child because the caregiver feels happy. So this further enhances the opportunity to hear language. So we can see that this caregiver child play, even during the very first 6 months, how it gives child the opportunity to learn language. A little later, when the child is around 9, 10 months of age, 1.5 years of age, the child can hold a lot of objects and she plays with them. And as she is attracted towards objects and holds them, the parents start telling the name of that object to the child. So these playful interactions provide a chance for the child to learn new vocabulary, and she also develops these concepts, the words for which she is learning. So we can see how the language of the child grows through such playful interactions. Then by around 3, children start engaging in imaginative or make-believe play. They'll pretend that their room is a jungle and they can see a lion and the lion is roaring and they are going out. All sorts of things children will imagine, or that they are on a train. So they enact imaginary situations. They pretend to be different characters. And in these situations, they use language creatively. They create their own dialogues. Sometimes they may imitate statements they may have heard or seen in some program. But a lot of the time, they are creating their own dialogues. So over here, through such make-believe and pretend play, children get a chance to use language in a creative manner. During outdoor play, child sees and listens to a variety of things. Her curiosity is aroused, and when she asks questions, once again she acquires new concepts and acquires new vocabulary. So play is such a strong medium for development of language. By 4 to 5 years of age, children also begin to play with their siblings, adults or friends. And when you are playing with others, you use language in different ways. Sometimes you put your demand, sometimes you negotiate, okay, I'll do this and you do that. Sometimes we raise questions, sometimes the child seeks answers. So in all these usages, the child is learning how language can be used for different purposes and how language has to be used differently when your purpose is different. So when you are probably wanting some help from someone, how that language will be. When you are talking to somebody of your age, how that language will be. And when you are talking to somebody who's much older to you, an adult, how that language will be. So the child understands how to practically use the language in different play situations. So in all of these situations, the development of language is taking place without much effort. Play also helps in the development of literacy. Literacy meaning learning to read and write. So learning to read and write requires the child to have an understanding of the sound and the letters which represent those sounds. So for example, the sound B is represented by the letter B. The sound K in Hindi is represented by the letter K in Hindi. So the child needs to understand these connections, and the playful interactions during storytelling or when children participate in rhymes, when parents tell rhymes to children, those are all occasions when children's awareness of sound is strengthened. So these playful activities help to develop listening skills which are so necessary for reading and writing. Apart from that, when the child is read out stories from a storybook, it makes the child interested in the book itself. The child is exposed to what is print, and the child begins to understand, oh, print is something that conveys meaning. And this print awareness is one of the first steps which takes the child on towards reading. So this playful story narration or reading out through a book is important for developing these early literacy skills. By 3 years of age, children also begin to use objects as symbols. You would have seen that when children play, a stick becomes a telephone or a piece of a rock becomes a piece of a cake. So learning to use objects as symbols is actually the first step. It's the preparation for acquiring literacy. Why? Because the alphabet and the written words are also symbols. So the understanding that some object can be represented by another object is the first step, And then that leads on to the understanding that the spoken words can be represented by written words. So play lays the foundation of development of literacy. Let's take the next domain of development, which is emotional development. Let's see how children's play supports emotional development. Now, play provides opportunities to express emotions. While playing, children express anger, fear, delight, happiness, all sorts of emotions. So that is a way that they express. But over and above this, what is important about play is that play helps the child to deal with emotions which the child may not be able to ordinarily express in other situations. So for example, the mother has scolded the child, but the child knows the social norm, the child cannot shout back at the mother. But that entire hurt is within the child. How does the child deal with that? Often you might have seen that in the next time the child plays with the doll, the child probably enacts out that entire scenario which has happened with the mother. So this playful opportunity allowed the child to express the hurt in an indirect manner. The child could not express that to the mother or to any other adult, but she can, in this imaginary make-believe situation of play, she can express that emotion. So here play works as therapy for children and helps them to come to terms with many of the things which they are feeling, which perhaps they may not even understand that they are feeling. And so therefore, in cases of children who have had some disturbed emotional responses or have had some emotional trauma, play is often used as treatment or therapy. So that is going to its higher extent, but even in normal day-to-day situations when children play, if you were to observe them, you would find that many of the things that they are enacting probably represent the emotions they have had to deal with in their daily lives, but which they cannot express in actual situation at that time for one or the other reason. Play helps in the development of imagination and creativity. As we've just said, that make-believe is a part of children's play. Anything can happen in the child's play. A small plate can become a spaceship, they can go to the moon, anything. So we can see that how it is a fertile ground for nurturance of imagination and creativity. It's a very flexible situation, the play. You can do everything. Anything is allowed, so long as you're not hurting others. Play promotes cognitive development. We know that cognitive development means the development of the thinking capacities of an individual. So, what happens during play that the child's thinking capacities are strengthened? Let's see. During play, children will handle and examine various objects. They explore the surroundings. They find out answers to their questions and understand the reasons for why things happen the way they do. The most important thing is that in play, it is the child's choice to choose how the child wants to play. And instinctively, the child chooses something which is neither too simple and neither too difficult. It is just at that right level of challenge which allows the child to grow. You might have seen that sometimes children will jump and they'll keep jumping, and suddenly they are no more interested. Something which engaged them for quite some time is now no more interesting. Why? So the reason is that when the child was continuously jumping, let us say, the child was practicing. It was a challenge for the child. The minute the child finds that, oh, now I can jump, the child has mastered the activity, it's no longer challenging for the child. So the child goes out looking for something else which will stimulate him more. So that is the beauty of play. It allows the child to select tasks which are just right for her level of thinking, so that it is a challenge, but not so much of a challenge that the child says, oh, I can't do it, and the child gets scared and doesn't do it. So for example, in the text we have a lovely example where we have talked about this little girl who sees that a mud pot was lying somewhere and it fell down and it broke. And when it breaks into so many pieces, her curiosity is aroused and she goes and picks up the pieces and she looks at them. And then she takes one piece and throws it again. And she finds that when she throws it, the piece breaks again. So again her curiosity is aroused and she again goes to those smaller pieces and picks up one and throws it again. This time the piece doesn't break because now it's too small to be broken. So here we can see the beginnings of experimenting or the beginnings of discovery. And that's the beauty of play, that it allows children to discover and learn for themselves. We all know, even from our own personal experience, that anything that we do by our own self is much more permanent learning than when you are told to do something. So the same thing holds true for children. In fact, it holds more true for children. In play, children are finding out things for themselves, and that learning is more permanent than when the adults were to tell them about it. And through this example, we just understood that. So maybe this little girl has understood that beyond a point when the piece becomes small, it won't break. Maybe she has not understood it in a scientific way, but she has understood in a way, in an intuitive way, she has understood that point. And we don't have to teach the science of it right now to the child. That can wait. The point is to encourage the children's curiosity and interest in finding out and doing things for themselves. So, with all this that we have spoken about, we can see that play helps in academic readiness. It's not that we are letting children play so that they can be academically bright. No. What we are saying is that play automatically creates a readiness of the child for the further schooling which lies ahead. How? We have just spoken that through play the child acquires concepts. When they are playing, the piece will break. She'll come to know about big and small. When they are standing and making a line, or they are running, they'll come to know about fast and slow. When they are putting things in water, some will float, some will sink, they'll come to know about floating and sinking. So all of these playful activities help them to build concepts. They develop the related vocabulary. They learn to express themselves in different ways, and they also learn how to be together and participate in a group. It may not be that every time things will be harmonious. There may be arguments and fights, but that's natural. We've seen how the skills of reading and writing have their origin in play. We've seen just now through this example of the child breaking the mud pot that play nurtures the spirit of inquiry and the desire to find out, which is actually so necessary for learning. And play increases the child's self-confidence because of all the things that she is able to do. Oh, I could jump from this height. Oh, I can run so fast. All of those things are so important for the child's self-esteem. And this is what actually tunes the child to accept and take on challenging situations. All of this helps to prepare her for schooling. So it's not as if by the time the child is 3 or 3.5, we need to sort of put the child through that formal process of preschooling and curtail her play. No, not at all. That's the most harmful thing that we can do for children. And as we continue with our lectures, we will learn and see how is it that we need to engage with young children during the preschool years. All this talk about children learning to play may make you think that so the adults have no role in children's learning. What is it that we have to do? What is the role of the teacher or of the parents? So let us see what is it that we adults have to do. It's not that we leave children free to play and we sit back and do whatever we want to do. No, children need to be supported, guided and helped to plan their play. So one of the first things we need to do is to help children understand their discoveries. Children may have found out something in play, but they don't really understand what they have found out. So like in this case, when we spoke about this girl who broke the mud pot, if an adult was around, maybe the adult would have gently just said, oh, did you see the large piece breaks, but the small piece doesn't break? Just that much. It's not that we have to drill some scientific thinking into the child's head. No, just bring the child's attention to what is there in front of the child. And somewhere the child's mind would be stimulated to think. So that's one role. Help children understand their discovery. Extend the child's discovery. So the child put something in water and it sank and the child is about to go away. Maybe we can say, oh, you put this thing, it sank. Why don't we try and put this and see whether it will sink or float? So that is extending the child's discovery. We could provide or create opportunities for discovery. What do we mean by that? We needn't always wait that children will discover something. We can keep materials or structure our learning environment in such a way that discoveries will happen. What do I mean by that? Supposing we were to place a variety of different types of rocks or a variety of different types of shells in the room. Children will be curious, they'll come, they'll talk about it, they'll say, oh, what is this? They'll come and show it to you, and that gives you an opportunity to talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about. So you have created an opportunity. And that leads me to the next point, that we plan and structure our activities in such a way that lead to discovery. So you create such situations that discovery will happen. Keep a bucket of water and put some things around that bucket, just leave it there. A child coming that way is bound to put that thing into the water. And so therefore you've landed up structuring the environment in such a way that it led to discovery. So during the early childhood years, most of the concepts, in fact I would say that all the concepts that we need the child to know before the child begins schooling can be learnt and taught through play. And the schooling also during the early childhood years has to be through the medium of play. So that's a topic that we'll take up in our next talk. For right now, we will just sum up what we have understood from this talk. We understood the characteristics of why some activity will be called play. We understood that the activity has to be something which is fun for the child. It is its own reward, that is, the child is not doing it for any external motivation. The participation of the child in that activity is active, and it is of the child's own free will. And so therefore we understood that television watching is not play. Then we have understood in detail through various examples how play fosters the development of the child in different domains, in physical and motor domain, in language domain, in social domain, emotional domain, in the cognitive domain, and it helps in the nurturance of imagination and creativity. So play is serious work for the child. We should never take children's play lightly, and we should never consider it a waste of time. It is actually the foundation on which children's entire learning is premised, and we need to really give children many opportunities for play. Thank you.